get to recovery, they get stumbling over this thing called spiritual stuff. Okay? Basically, Bill laid it out in the big book for us really clearly. He said, you know, we've got this lack of power dilemma. You've got to find some power someplace. And so they started to define this notion of a power greater than themselves. Now, many people, as soon as they heard this, God as you understand him, they right away sort of made this shift to thinking about supreme being of the universe, kind of traditional religious ideas. Now, for atheists and agnostics, that's a hard pill to swallow. It's like they don't even want to talk about that. And so you have to say, well, no, that isn't really what Bill and Bob had in mind when they started to develop these things. And so they said, what we really want you to do is think about a higher power, one that makes sense to you. What we want you to be able to do is begin to develop a relationship with that power and figure out how to access it so that you can stay clean and sober. Because clean and sober, what it's all about. If you're not clean and sober, you got nothing going on. Okay, that's the key piece. Well, how do you get there? Well, that's part of the challenge, part of the question we want to try to wrestle with tonight, because we talked about these many paths that people are taking to get there. But the other piece we want to get next to is the fact that Bill defines it in the course of some of the program literature in both the AA Big Book and the 12 and 12, starts to define it in terms of some specific terms. He talks about a spiritual awakening or a spiritual experience. And right away, people start getting pictures in their minds of movies from the 50s, you know, where the clouds would part and the angels would come down and stuff would start to happen. And what he realized was eventually that isn't what happens for most people. For most people, it's a gradual thing. It's something they come into slowly. As a matter of fact, they're not even sure when it happened, but they can look back and say it has happened. Perhaps even more importantly is that people around you will realize it has happened before you realize it has happened. Bill talks about that in the second appendix to the Big Book, where he talks about this notion that frequently other people will notice it before we do.